The big house in Westfield, New Jersey, is too quiet for a school day. It is November 1971. A tall, calm man named John List walks from room to room like he is checking boxes on a list. He has already done something unthinkable. In the ballroom, a record player clicks as soft church music fills the air. On the dining room table, plates sit where a family should be. In the kitchen, a lunch bag waits for a boy who will never open it. John stands at his desk, writes a final note to his pastor, lowers the thermostat, turns off the lights one by one, and walks out the back door. The house goes still. For days, no one knows what happened inside. And then a strange smell begins to creep from the windows, and neighbors whisper, "Where is the List family?" What the police will find will shock the nation. But we are not there yet. Before the house falls silent, life looks normal from the street. The brick mansion sits on a neat lawn. John wears a suit every morning and carries a briefcase. He kisses his wife, Helen, on the cheek. He tells his mother, Alma, that he will be home for dinner. He reminds his daughter, Patricia, to practice the school play, tells his son, John Jr., to hustle on the soccer field, and ruffles little Frederick's hair. He then drives away like any other father on their block. But John is not going to work. He lost his job months ago and has been hiding it. He parks at the train station or in a quiet church pew and stares at the floor, trying to plan a way out of bills, secrets, and fear. Money is tight, and every day it squeezes him a little more. The house is beautiful, but expensive. The heat costs too much. The mortgage is heavy. John is a careful man who believes rules must be followed, and he worries that his family is drifting from the strict path he thinks is right. He thinks about shame and failure, and how other people in town would judge him. He feels trapped by a problem he will not share. Instead of asking for help, he builds a private world of plans inside his head. He tells himself that hard choices are holy choices if they keep a family safe, even when that is not true. The pressure grows. Teachers call because Patricia misses practice. The bank asks about payments. Helen gets sick more often and argues sharply. Alma, who lives upstairs, wants peace and order. John sits in the study late into the night and adds numbers on paper. The columns never balance. He flips open a Bible, reads a line, nods like he found an answer, and then closes it slowly. He decides the family's future must change in a single day. He decides he will do it quietly so no one can stop him. The morning he picks is calm and cold. John turns off the doorbell, so drop-in visitors will think no one is home. He writes letters to school and the boss he does not have, telling him a family is going to North Carolina to care for a sick relative. He stops the mail and the milk. He lines up the tasks in a row, this first, that next, like marching steps. He is very neat. He is very steady. He thinks his plan is logical. It is not. It is terrible. And yet the town does not see the storm inside his house. From the sidewalk, it is just a big place with lace curtains and a father who smiles politely. From inside, time ticks toward a choice that cannot be undone. When the sun sets, that record player will be playing hymns into empty rooms. The thermostat will be set low to save money. The house will grow colder and colder, as if even the walls are holding their breath. Days later, the neighbors notice every light burning at night, then all the lights going dark at once. A teacher wonders why Patricia never came back to class. Mail piles on the porch. The smell appears, faint at first, then worse. Someone finally calls the police. Officers walk up the front steps and find a note about a family trip. They listen. The house is quiet. One officer reaches for the door. He turns the knob. He steps inside the dark hall, hears the softness of the furnace, and shines his flashlight toward the ballroom. Right as the record needle scrapes to a stop, the police step into the dark hall. Their shoes echo on the floor. A cold wind creeps from the vents. One officer whispers, "Do you smell that?" Another points his flashlight toward the wide doorway. The light slides across the polished wood and stops on a row of long shapes on the ballroom floor. They are lined up neatly, like people sleeping. Blankets are pulled tight. Church music is still, the record finally quiet. An officer kneels, lifts a corner of a blanket, and his breath catches. "Call it in," he says. voice shaking. Now. Radios crackle. The big house is no longer quiet. While sirens start in the distance, we step back to the morning that led here. John List wakes early, calm as a clock. He turns off the doorbell. He writes notes to the school and the milkman. He moves through the kitchen like a careful cook, but he is not making breakfast. He is making a plan. He walks upstairs to his mother's small apartment. Alma is kind and strict and always neat. She trusts her son. She does not know what he has decided. In a few minutes, the house will change forever. Downstairs, his wife, Helen, sits at the table. She has been sick and tired for a long time. She and John argue more than before. Today, she looks pale. The day turns from slow to sharp in a heartbeat. We will not linger on the worst moments, because the pictures are heavy and do not need extra words. What matters is that John makes a terrible choice and does not stop. He believes he is saving his family from shame. He is not. He is ending their futures. He covers 2 still bodies with blankets and drags them to the ballroom. He folds the corners like a hospital bed. He smooths the fabric with his palm. Everything must be straight. Patricia is due at school. John calls the office and says the family has an emergency trip. He signs her absence with his careful voice. He does the same for young Frederick. The phone clicks back into its cradle. Outside, a mail truck passes. A neighbor rakes leaves into a neat pile. The world goes on, not knowing what sits behind the front door. The house grows colder as the thermostat drops. Time slows. John waits. He listens for a car in the driveway. In the afternoon, his oldest son, John Jr., is due home from school and soccer. The father watches the clock. Every minute is a drumbeat. He has lined up coats, cleaned the kitchen, and left nothing out of place. He plays a record of church hymns to make the room sound calm. The music drifts under the ceiling like a soft, wrong blanket. Sirens fade in our ears, and we return to police at the house days later. They move room to room. In the kitchen, dishes are stacked. In the dining room, plates wait on the table like guests who never arrived. In the study, they find letters, each addressed in tidy handwriting. To the pastor, to the school, to a boss. A detective climbs the back stairs to the third-floor apartment and stops at the doorway. He whispers a prayer. Another officer stands in the upstairs hallway, looking at family photos on the wall. A boy in a soccer uniform, a girl with a bright smile, a mother in a neat dress, a grandmother with careful hair, and a father in a suit, straight-backed and stern. The officer swallows hard. "Where's the father now?" someone asks. No one answers. Back in the timeline before the police, the front door opens. After school, John Jr. steps inside, drops his book bag, and calls, "Mom!" The record in the ballroom keeps playing. The house replies with silence. The air feels wrong, like the moment before a thunderstorm. He takes a few steps, frowning. He sees that the doorbell is taped. He sees that the thermostat is low. He sees that lights are on in the day. He does not see his father at first, standing in the shadow between rooms, hands shaking though his face looks calm. "Son," the father says, voice flat, "come here." The next seconds are loud and fast and full of panic. A struggle begins in the hallway, sudden as a door slamming in a storm. The music swells from the ballroom, bright and false, while heavy footsteps hit the floor and a sharp crack snaps the air, just as we cut the sound and freeze the moment. The sound of that final echo hangs in the air for a long time before fading into silence. Then there's only the quiet hum of the furnace and the ticking of the hallway clock that doesn't seem to care what has just happened. The record player skips, then continues playing its slow hymn. John List stands there, breathing hard. His face is pale but calm again, as if a switch has flipped inside him. He walks to the ballroom and lines up his last child beside the others. He smooths the blanket one final time. Then he steps back and looks at his work like a man who just finished a long day, not a man who has destroyed his entire world. The house is now still. John wipes his hand with a cloth, puts away his tools, and washes his face in the sink. He changes into a clean suit, fixes his tie, and sits at his desk. He writes a long letter to his pastor, explaining in cold, steady handwriting that he killed his family to save their souls from a sinful world. He says he could no longer provide for them and feared they would turn away from faith. To him, it sounds like reason. To anyone else, it is madness written in perfect grammar. He folds the letter neatly and leaves it on his desk beside his Bible. Then John walks from room to room turning off lights, except for those above the ballroom where his family rests. He sets the thermostat low to slow the decay, as if that tiny act of control could make the horror look tidy. He locks the doors, collects his car keys, and steps out into the cold November air. Snowflakes drift through the streetlights as he drives away. He doesn't speed. He doesn't look back. The mansion behind him glows faintly through the trees, like a lantern burning in fog. Days pass. Neighbors notice small things. The lights that never turn off, milk bottles stacking by the door, the mail that keeps coming. Patricia's drama teacher wonders why she missed rehearsal. The school calls, but no one answers. Friends stop by, but the doorbell doesn't ring because the switch is taped off. The big house stays silent. The days turn into weeks. Then, as winter winds whip through Westfield, a neighbor finally reports a strange smell coming from a mansion. Police arrive and break open the door. What they find shocks even veteran detectives. The ballroom looks like a funeral arranged by someone who misunderstood what mercy means. 5 bodies under blankets, each carefully placed. The air is heavy and cold. The music is long stopped, but the needle still sits on the record, scratching a slow circle. The note on the desk explains everything and nothing. Officers read it with trembling hands. The newspapers will later call it the perfect family murder. But where is John List? For nearly 2 decades, no one knows. He disappears into the world like smoke. The mansion stands empty, decaying. Rumors spread, ghost stories, whispers of punishment and guilt. Years later, the house burns down, taking what's left of that terrible November day with it. Still, the name John List lingers in police files and nightmares. Then, in 1989, a television show called America's Most Wanted airs a story. A sculptor creates a clay bust showing what John might look like older, with gray hair and glasses. A neighbor watching the show in Denver stares at the screen and freezes. The face looks too familiar. She calls the police. They find him living quietly under another name, Robert Clark, in Colorado. He has a new wife, a new job, and still goes to church every Sunday. When officers confront him, he doesn't fight. He simply nods and says, "Yes, I'm John List." During the trial, the courtroom sits frozen as the details are read aloud. Even the judge struggles to find words. John shows little emotion. He says he regrets what had to be done, but his calm tone makes it sound like he is talking about closing a business, not ending lives. The jury doesn't hesitate. He is sentenced to life in prison. Years later, inside a cell, John List grows old and quiet. He reads his Bible every day. Some say he never truly understood what he had done. Others say he understood too well and just couldn't face it. He dies in 2008, alone, far from that big silent house in New Jersey. The mansion is gone, but the story remains, a warning about pride, control, and the lies people tell themselves when they're too afraid to ask for help. Somewhere in the quiet suburbs, people still point to where the house once stood and whisper, "That's where he did it. That's where the List family vanished." And just like that, the hymn begins again in the memory of Westfield, soft, haunting, and forever unfinished.